Hello, today we are going to talk about parabolas. Our targets for today are to complete the square to put parabolas in vertex form, use vertex form, and one more point to draw the graph of a parabola. All right, let's start with our basic parabolas. We have y equals x squared, which we are familiar with. We've seen our happy parabola before. But what's new to us is the x equals y squared. So we flip the squared around, and so now we just flip the parabola on its side. Some of you may say, well, that's not a function, which you're right, it's not a function because it does not pass the vertical line test, but neither did the circle or the ellipse. So this is conic section, so we are working with things that are not actually functions. All right, so we dealt with vertex form before. All right, so we dealt with this vertex form where we have y equals a parentheses x minus h squared plus k, where our vertex is hk. We know that if we have a positive a value like y equals 3 x minus 5 quantity squared plus 2, where our a is positive, we have a happy parabola, and so he's opening up. However, if we have a negative a value, then we end up with an unhappy parabola, so our parabola opens down. What's new to us is this idea of x equals a y minus k quantity squared plus h. So now we've switched the x and y's around as well as the h and k, but our vertex here is still hk. All right, so if we have a positive a value, then our parabola will open to the right. All right, but if we have a negative a value, then our parabola will open to the left. All right, so let's look at some examples of this. We end up with x squared minus 4x plus 9. We know it's a quadratic because we see the 2, and so it's going to be a parabola shape. This is one we've worked with before because it's y equals. First thing we're going to do is complete the square. So let's refresh completing the square. The first thing we should do is factor out the a value, but in this case a is 1, so there's nothing really to do there. All right, so I write x squared down, and I write the minus 4x, and then what I like to do is leave myself an open space and put the plus 9 down. All right, and then I take half of my b and I square it. So half of my b is going to be 2, negative 2. And if you square negative 2, you end up with positive 4. So then I add 4. But if I add 4 to the problem, I've changed the problem. So right away, I have to take 4 away. So I'm technically adding 0 to the problem. So I'm not changing anything. Some of you have learned completing the square in the past where you just have a plus a line over here, and this is a magical number. If that's how you've completed the square in the past, that's fine. Go ahead and do that. I just want to show you where the math comes, especially when we start to have an a value. All right, so next step is to factor the first 3 terms. Give me 2 numbers that multiply together, give me positive 4, add together to give me negative 4. X minus 2 and x minus 2. Carrying the 9 with me and the minus 4. Well, the idea of completing the square is to create a perfect square. So x minus 2 times x minus 2 we can really write as x minus 2 quantity squared. And then we get to combine our like terms and we end up with plus 5. All right, so we have completed A. Now it asks us to determine, is it opening up or down? So we look at the a value. The a value here is 1, positive, so therefore it's going to open up because it's y equals. We know y equals means opens up or down. Positive a value means it's going to open up. All right, our next thing to do is to sketch. So I always start out with my vertex, hk, so I go over to the right 2 units, and I go up 5. And that's where my vertexes. I can also know that if I go 1 over, it's also going to go 1 up from both directions, and I use symmetry to graph the parabola. All right, let's try another one a little bit more difficult. Let's put an a value in there. So the first thing I'm going to do is factor out the a of the first two terms. In this case, you could factor it out of all three, but a lot of problems you can't, so I'm not even going to go there. So if I take this 3 out of here, I'll have 6x. I end my parenthesis, I carry the plus 9 down. Okay, so I haven't done anything to my thing. Now off to the side, I go, okay, I want half of my new b, which is -6 here, and I square that. So half of -6 is -3, squared is 9. So I add 9, but then right again, subtract 9. So I'm adding 0. All right, this is where people get a little messed up. They're okay with factoring those three because the idea of completing the square means that that has to be a perfect square. So I have x minus 3 quantity squared. Where they get messed up is with this 3 out front. You put it in front of the parentheses, and you also distribute it to the -9. So then it becomes -27 plus 9. And again, some of you are thinking about this magical number off to the side that you have learned maybe in the past as far as completing the square. You always add. This is just a times whatever that number was, and that's fine as long as you don't forget to multiply this number over here by a, right? You're not just really subtracting 9, you're really subtracting 27 from the problem. So please be careful on that. All right, and then the last step is just to combine like terms, and we get -18. All right, completing the square is over. Now B wants to say opens up, right, left, down. All right, y equals up or down. +3 means we're going to open up. All right, then I start out by graphing, again, always starting with my vertex. My vertex is HK, right? So, and remember that's always x minus h. So in this case, it is 1, 2, 3, but it's always plus k. And since I have minus k here, that means I'm going to go down 18. So at -3, or sorry, at +3, I go down to -18, I put a dot. And then the way parabolas work is you can go 1 over, 1 up on both sides here on one point and draw in your parabola. All right, last one. If you think you've got it, pause the video and try this problem on your own. If you don't, watch me do this one more with me. All right, first thing I'm going to do, take out the -4. If I take out the -4, this becomes a +4y. Again, I leave myself an open circle, open parenthesis, and I write -17. All right, then I take half of my new b, so half of 4, and I square it. Well, half of 4 is 2, squared is 4, so I add 4, I subtract 4. Okay, then I go ahead and factor my first 3 terms. Carry my 4 down. So if I factor my first 3 terms, I end up with y plus 2 quantity squared. All right, and then we have to make sure we distribute that -4 to that other -4, and so now that leaves me with +16. And my very last step is to combine my like terms, and so I end up with x equals -4 parentheses y plus 2 quantity squared minus 1. All right, so now what I need to do is determine, does this open up, down, right, or left? Well, because it's x equals, right away I know my answer is either right or left. Okay, and then because my a value is negative, that means I'm going to open down. Sorry, that means I'm going to open to the left. So my answer for B is left. All right, and then C wants me to sketch it. So again, remember this is your h and this is your k value. So you have to do HK. But if you recall, and it might be helpful to go back and look at this, it is Y minus K plus H. Okay, so that kind of switches a little bit on you there. So when doing this, we know that it should have been minus. So since it's plus, it ends up meaning that we're going to go down 2. And this should have been plus, but it's minus, so we go over 1. And there is my vertex. Now, if this confuses you, you can always go back and resort to t-charts, right? Pick values for y, put them in and see what you get for x. Okay, so if I pick -2, -2 plus 2 is 0, squared is 0, times -4 is still 0, and so I get -1. Now what you have to be careful is you're plotting x, y, right? So make sure that you plot this first. This is still the point -1, -2, right? So -1, -2, there I am. Okay, now we already know it opens to the left, but we know this is a vertical or a stretch factor. It's technically going to be horizontal now because we've switched it. But we know it's going to stretch it, so let's see how much. So I would just grab another random point. So maybe I want to use -3. -3 plus 2 is -1, squared is +1, times -4 is -4, minus 1 is -5. So now I'm plotting -5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and my y value is -3. All right, let's do one more value. How about the value where x or y is -1? If I do -1 plus 2, I'm at 1, square it, still 1, times -4, -4, minus 1, ends up -5 again. So again, x value is -5, y value is 1. There's my 3 points that help me graph my parabola. Again, when you're doing t-chart, just make sure you realize these are the x values on this side, so you have to plot them first and then the y, right? So make sure you're not messing up your x, y. All right, so that is all we have for today for parabolas. Hopefully that is enough to get you to do the on your own problem, and we will look at this problem tomorrow in class. Have a good day.